Hello! Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Jordan Levitt, UFC fighter and bookworm. And I started this YouTube channel to catalog and to journal my reading experience for 2022. Because last year I had a goal, and that goal was to read 100 books in 1 year. And I did it, and I accomplished it, and I enjoyed it. So today I wanted to make a video about the 3 main things I learned from reading 100 books in 1 year. Obviously, when you read that many books in 1 year, you learn a lot. That's a lot of knowledge. But to make a video about the many things that I learned last year would take way too long. So we're going to focus on the big 3 lessons that I learned, that kept being reaffirmed, and that I kept meditating on. The first big thing I learned that I wanted to talk about is reading fiction is not a waste of time. I had a reoccurring conversation happen many times last year. People would learn about my reading goal. They would ask me what type of books I read. I would say mostly fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, that sort of thing. They would flash me a smile, maybe roll their eyes a little bit, and be like, oh, so you read fun reads. You don't read nonfiction. You're not reading business or self-improvement books. And it would bug me. Because they would say it in a slightly, playful, condescending, maybe even a judgy tone. Like, if you have so much time to read, why spend it on such frivolous things? And I used to be one of these people. I didn't really start reading in my adult life until 2017. I had a goal for that year to read 2 chapters a day, which then turned into 1 book a week, which then turned into 56 books for 2017. And the vast majority of those books were nonfiction. The next year I had a goal of reading 100 books. For 2018, I read 100 books. And 72 of those books were nonfiction. And then 6 of them were poetry. And the last little bit were fiction. And the only reason I started reading fiction was because I started dating my wife. And she is also a very voracious reader. But she read almost exclusively fiction. So she recommended me a few books. I started reading some more fun reads. And it added a lot of value to that year. I took the next year off because we were recently married. And then 2020, I had the goal of reading 70 books. Still read majority nonfiction. But this year, I'm very happy to announce that of the 100 books that I read, 60 were nonfiction, 33 were fiction, and 7 were poetry. And I definitely do not feel that I learned less in 2022 than I did in any of the previous years where I read a lot. Because I believe, I dare say I know, that fiction adds value to your life. And that there is a reason that stories have been used to transmit wisdom and values throughout all of human history. Stories allow you to teach people life-changing lessons without making them feel like they are learning, without making it feel like it is a chore. Fiction expands your mind. It increases your creativity. And it increases your capacity to feel empathy for people. When you're reading a story, you learn lessons about these characters' lives, and you relate to them. And as you read more stories, it becomes easier to relate to other people in real life. At least that's what I've found. There was one thought that kept returning to my mind in 2022. And essentially paraphrasing that thought was, if you were to know everything about a person, every trial, every tribulation, every trauma, every success, every failure, every heartbreak, you couldn't help but love that person. Because when you read these stories about these protagonists, about these characters, you learn so much about their lives, about their history, and you grow to love these fictional characters. And I found myself encountering people that maybe bugged me on my day-to-day. And whenever I was feeling negative emotions towards them, I would remind myself that I don't know every part of their story. And I can't make a full judgment. I have to wait until I have all the details of their story before I could be angry at them. And I really truly believe that reading so much fiction this year made me a better, more empathetic person. A little side note about the value of fiction versus nonfiction. When you read a nonfiction book over and over again, you get the same lesson every time. You may pick up little details that you missed, but they were there. They were there for the reader to behold. But when you read fiction over and over again, it is never the same story twice. Because as you mature and as you experience more things through life, you relate to these characters on a deeper level. Art and fiction and stories grow more beautiful the older you get. And that's valuable. The second big thing I learned from reading all those books in 2022, and that I feel like my experience kind of proves is that reading capacity and your ability to read a lot of books is a muscle that can grow. Last year, in January, I read 6 books. In February, I read 6 books. In March, I read 6 books. But the last 3 months of the year, in October, I read 15 books. In November, I read 12 books. December, I read 10 books. It would have been impossible for me to read so many books early in the year, especially after essentially taking reading off in 2021. I needed to do that mental calisthenics. I needed to read those little books to build confidence so that I could read and absorb the information for more books down the line. You don't just wake up one day with great reading comprehension skills and the ability to sit down and read for hours and hours. Because in 2023, we are being trained to have short attention spans. All of our entertainment gives us instant gratification, and reading is definitely a slow burn. Sometimes it takes many hours, many hundreds of pages, for you to get the emotional payoff you desire. And you need to build your mental muscles to become a good reader. Perhaps you've had a different experience of reading, perhaps you've always been a strong reader, but being a person that was a very slow reader, that didn't really start reading until his early 20s, I definitely believe this to be true. I definitely think that my experience last year proves that you can grow in your capacity to read. That your reading comprehension is not just at a base level for your entire life. The third big lesson I learned last year, and this is perhaps the most important lesson that pertains to way more aspects of life, is that we waste so much time on a day-to-day basis. To give you an idea of my schedule and my responsibilities, I have a wife, I have a toddler, I have 2 dogs, we recently bought a house, I train 30 to 35 hours a week approximately, I do film study, I have to recover from those intense workouts because you're not much use to anybody when you've worked out for 6 hours straight. So I have just about as much free time as any other person. And you would think, of all those responsibilities and all those obligations that I have, that every free moment I had was spent with my nose in a book. And that is just sadly not the case. Not the case at all. I am not a great example of discipline. I'm a master procrastinator. And I definitely spent way more time watching reality TV with my wife, watching TV with the family, spending time on YouTube. I wasted so many hours, hundreds, perhaps thousands of hours this year, on frivolous things that didn't really help me too much. In many ways, my reading goal helped me fix my life, helped me get rid of a lot of bad habits, and helped me value my time a lot more. I deleted social media off my phone because I had to reach my reading goals. I stopped loitering about and having frivolous conversation for hours and hours because I had to get home and read and be a husband and be a father. We always hear that life is too short, that there are not enough hours in the day to get anything done. And I disagree. I think if you are disciplined, and you keep your eye on the prize, and you focus on the goals you want to get done, and you ignore frivolous things, you could accomplish amazing things. So in many ways, the third lesson I learned this year that I've really been contemplating on is the most valuable lesson that I learned. I learned to value my time. So even though I spent so many hours reading so many books, many of them were really small, many of them were really big, I definitely feel like I was blessed with more time because I gained discipline and I gained focus. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked it, push that little thumbs up icon below. Subscribe to my channel if you want to follow my reading journey. And I'll talk to you guys next time.